All right, thank you very much, guys. As you can see, the theme I'm going to be talking about is covenant in the Old Testament, and in particular how it carries through. So, the purpose of the Bible is not as a historical record of events and stories, and it's not only relevant to Christianity. One of its key purposes is to show and set out the promise that God has established with his creation. When looking at the word covenant, and in particular the definition, we can see that it means, in the broad terms, it means an agreement, a deal, or a promise. The promise or covenant unfolds throughout the Old Testament and reveals both the promise that God has set out for his people and also the path that needs to be taken. The first of the covenants is outlined with Noah in Genesis 6:18. It's good. 6:18, and in the Noahic covenant, where God promises to Noah that he will never again wipe out everyone through a flood, and that his original intent for mankind through Noah's family will be restored. We can see in 6:18, it says that, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. We can see the several aspects with regards to this. There are several promises where God outlines that through Noah that his family will fill the earth. There will be no more floods, and also the covenant of a sign of that promise. We can see the promise and desire for God to bless his people continue through this and into Moses and the people of Israel. In Exodus 19, verses 5-6, we can see that God not only reinforced his covenant with his people, but also how he set out a pathway for them to follow. This is in the Mosaic covenant. And here we can see Exodus 19, 5-6. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. And this is in particular reference to the commandments. Despite bringing clarity, Israel continued to slip back into old habits. However, the original covenant was unconditional, set out by law. And in Jeremiah 31, 31-34, the ultimate promise or covenant is set out. Whilst it does confirm that obedience is required, the important aspect to this is that it goes on to say that a full surrender will occur when God is written on their hearts. And as we go through Jeremiah 31, it says, "The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I'll make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they broke my covenant, although I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will they teach their neighbor or say to one another, 'Know the Lord,' because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more." We can see as it comes through each of these relevant covenants that it becomes more simple. God is setting out more simple through the laws, and then not just following the rules, but more so a promise and a declaration on the heart. Each of these display the promise and intent of God with his people from the start of creation. From the beginning, the original design was that mankind would have connection with God, and that through this, they would be fruitful, that they would be blessed. Despite the fall of man, God maintained his covenant with man, and accordingly, the desire for man to be in relationship with him. In pursuit of this, we can see that throughout the time of the Old Testament, it covers there are numerous occasions and milestones where there are significant examples of God reinforcing his covenant, his promise. This is evident through following the original fall of man. God shows his love for man through providing opportunity and guidance through strong, godly men. For God's covenant to be driven through man, these godly men needed to be obedient to God. This is evident through Noah and his trust in God through what he was going to do through the flood. I think we can all agree that that trust alone is significant. And we can see the evidence of obedience work through other key figures in the Old Testament, i.e. Abraham and David. As I've mentioned, in Moses, where he is obedient to listening to God. And through this, the people of Israel and those that follow, that they will be blessed. As time progresses, whilst key figures come and go, the promise and desire of God remains, as does the challenges and traits of man. Accordingly, the progression and requirement for one key person's relationship with God, influencing many to individual relationships, is established, and God in particular with each person. The relevancy of this, and whilst we are in a different time now, the key principles still remain. The covenant and the promise that God made with his people in Noah and Moses' time is still exceptionally and very relevant promise that God makes with his people today. God wants to have a personal relationship with everyone. That relationship needs to be more than superficial, and he wants it to be more than just the following of rules or a person, but needs to be one where there is a full surrender to God, with nothing else in their life as the key driver or focus for it to be on their hearts. With social media and access to information today, this is particularly important that people are trying not to access a relationship through someone else's relationship with God. We see this is very relevant when we refer to people just listening to a message on a Sunday through a pastor. The key element to the theme of covenant that God has established is his unconditional love for his people, for you and I. Over time, God has used his people to be his hands and feet to display his love, and through obedience to bless them and others. The ultimate display of God's promise and the original covenant is through the sacrifice of his son Jesus, so that we could have direct relationship with God and surrender fully to him. And we can see in John 3:16 that we see that God loved us as per his original covenant, that he gave his only son, and all we have to do is believe in him, to have him on our hearts, and that is it. We have everlasting life and relationship with God. And that is it. Thank you very much.